In the context of this Jeffrey Epstein scandal and their refusal to share information to the American people, despite promising to do so, one must ponder the question, what are they hiding from the American people?
Given people feel that the rich and the powerful have been not held accountable, that they have a different set of rules, and that there may be government officials involved.
Donald Trump campaigned to release the files. This was central to what he wanted to do. And we owe it to the American public to restore trust there.
Hi again, everybody. It's now 5 o'clock in the East. As the rift in the Republican Party deepens over the Trump administration's really terrible handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case and the politics around it, Democrats are seizing the moment. A seemingly reignited and unified party, Democrats are not letting the issue go, making sure to hold the GOP's feet to the fire on this one. The Epstein scandal, along with the recently passed bill by Republicans that cuts back on the safety net and kicks millions of people off their health care, may be giving Democrats the opportunity to take back control of the narrative and eventually of Congress in the midterms. This morning, Roy Cooper, former governor of North Carolina, entered the race for his state's Senate seat, a bright spot for Democrats considering his proven ability to win statewide in a state that voted for Donald Trump in the last 3 elections. Take a listen to his message.
Today, for too many Americans, the middle class feels like a distant dream. Meanwhile, the biggest corporations and the richest Americans have grabbed unimaginable wealth at your expense. It's time for that to change. Right now, our country's facing a moment as fragile as any I can remember. And the decisions we make in the next election will determine if we even have a middle class in America anymore. I never really wanted to go to Washington. I just wanted to serve the people of North Carolina right here where I've lived all my life. But these are not ordinary times.
Now, Governor Cooper will join my colleague Rachel tonight at 9. And his candidacy, the candidacy of Cooper, a successful and tested Democrat, gives the party reason for optimism to flip a Senate seat. The party has simultaneously been clamoring for fresh faces and new voices, for a new generation to come in and help usher in change and engage voters and, frankly, help rebrand the party. Enter James Tallarico. He's a 36-year-old Democratic state representative from the Austin area. He's currently a seminary student. He drew this comment from podcaster Joe Rogan recently.
If you have so much interest in getting to the bottom of this, like universally on both sides of the aisle, and yet nothing gets done, that tends to give people this fear that cynicism is the correct perspective.
And I want to validate that there is reason and good reasons to be disillusioned. Mm-hmm. I guess all I'm pushing back on is that second step of it's always going to be this way.
Right. It doesn't have to be this way.
That is the key step.
Right.
So I'm
That's
not
because you need to run for president.
Yeah.
We need someone who's actually a good person.
Tallarico may not be mulling a presidential bid at the moment, despite being called a good person from Joe Rogan, but he is seriously considering a run for the U.S. Senate. The state representative's appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast, as well as his massive following on social media. He has nearly 1 million followers on TikTok, and a proven ability to work with Republicans in the Texas state legislature are causing many to ask, is he the future? The future of the Democratic Party, at least. As a Fort Worth Star-Telegram noted, quote, since his appearance on the online Joe Rogan Experience, Tallarico is drawing in crowds twice the size of the meeting hall, even in red turning purple Collin County, Texas. That is where we start the hour with Texas State Representative James Tallarico. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm a huge fan of yours, Nicole, so thanks for having me on the show.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. I want to ask you first about that exchange with Joe Rogan, about your response. It's been my theory throughout my career that the only thing that stays the same in politics is that it's always changing, and we are always one leader away from something totally different, that if you love it or hate it, you're one leader away from something totally different. Do you believe that, or do you think our politics have changed for the worse in this moment?
Well, the reason I went on Joe Rogan's show is because I think that my party has to get outside of its comfort zone. We've got to go into places where we don't normally go, to talk to people we don't normally talk to, because we need a bigger tent. We need a bigger coalition if we're going to win back power in this country and in states like Texas. I just got finished with a brutal legislative session. Republican extremism means that my constituents can't get basic health care. It means that schools are closing across my community, across my district. And so we have a moral imperative to win, not just to talk, not just to protest, but to actually win political power to make people's lives better. I mean, that's the whole reason we're doing this. And so that's why I went on his show. It's why I've been on Fox News. It's why I've been on the Christian Broadcasting Network, so that people can hear directly from a Democratic elected officials about my values and our vision for this country.
What are your values and what is your vision? What are you communicating on these shows?
Well, you mentioned in your intro about my faith. It's the foundation of everything I do. My granddad was a Baptist preacher in South Texas. And I remember when I was real little, he told me that our religion, Christianity, is a simple religion, not an easy religion, but a simple religion, because Jesus gave us 2 commandments: love God and love neighbor. And so that's what I do at the state capitol. I lower people's prescription drug costs. I expand access to child care. I reform our justice system. I try to fund our neighborhood schools. That's my way of trying to love my neighbor through public policy. It's also what I did as a public school teacher. And so that love for other people, including people who are different from me, people who may not agree with me, I think that's what's missing in our civic discourse these days. It feels like there's a real lack of love in our national conversation. And I think people are hungry for that. We've had 10 years of politics as blood sport, politics as professional wrestling. I think people are ready for something different, earnestness and sincerity and love. And I do think those things are going to make a comeback in 2026.
Are you at all worried that Kamala Harris's campaign about joy was rejected and a message of love could be rejected as well?
I mean, I think that was one of the most successful parts of that campaign, was that joy. So, when you lose an election by a point and a half, it's important not to underlearn lessons or overlearn lessons. And there were some wonderful parts about that campaign. And I think the joyfulness was one of the best parts. And I think we need to double down on that going forward. But, one thing I think we could have done a better job of is putting the vice president in positions where she could talk directly to folks who don't always hear from a Democrat. And Joe Rogan's show is a place where you can do that. It's a little scary because, I wasn't given a list of topics or questions. I was going in kind of blind. It was a 2.5-hour interview with a host who is not necessarily considered a Democrat or a progressive. But I think we hit it off, and I think we really connected on some key issues.
I mean, you're making a point about connection, and I wonder how much you think that the Democrats need to connect, or if it's that the Democrats need to moderate. What is your diagnosis of why the Democrats? I'm shocked by this as a former Republican who's voted for Democrats without thinking twice in the last 3 presidential elections. The Democrats are at their lowest approval rating in decades. I think 63% of Americans disapprove of the Democratic Party. Is your diagnosis that it's around substance, or is your diagnosis that it's around a lack of connection, or a combination of the two?
Well, and I would say that there are probably a lot of self-identified Democrats who also disapprove of the current state of the Democratic Party. And there are a lot of folks in red states like Texas who, frankly, are dissatisfied with the way the National Democratic Party fails to compete in red and in even purple parts of the country. We can't be a party that's isolated to the coasts or the big cities. We've got to be a party that competes everywhere and competes for every single vote. I flipped a Trump district when I first got elected in 2018. I was running in a district that hadn't voted for a Democrat since before I was in kindergarten. And I did that by knocking on literally thousands of doors, talking directly to people about why I'm doing this and who I'm fighting for and what I'm trying to change. And, you know, people didn't agree with me on every single issue, but I told them that you can always count on me to be honest, and you can always count on me to tell you exactly where I am on an issue, and I will always have an open door for you to try to change my mind. And that kind of, you know, shooting straight with people, I think means a lot in this current environment. So I, in my experience, whether as a teacher or as an elected official or as a candidate, people don't change their behaviors unless there's a relationship, unless there is a connection, unless there's a bond. And that's what we have to rebuild. It's why I went on that podcast, and I shared a teaching from my faith that we have to love our enemies. And that's a scary thing to do, especially when the stakes are so high. But if we can build that authentic bond with people who may be on the other side of an issue, I think it could transform our politics and help save this American experiment.